this is about the camera, and I think you know what camera I mean. It's the G85 or G80 in UK or G81 in Germany. So hello guys in Germany as well, it's due because it's roughly a year since I owned the camera, so this will be G85 after a year of usage. I've owned a D80 before by Nikon. This was a DSLR camera which didn't have any film functioning at all, and I was just using my mobile phone and also compact cameras for filming stuff. I was expecting a lot from this camera and also getting good usage of my mobile phones due to the fact that they evolved also from 10 megapixel shooters or 8 megapixel shooters up to 20 or 16 megapixel shooters. And also my experience with filming with DSLRs was with the Canon 5D Mark II. Back in the days at the university I've shot with this camera several videos, and this camera was basically 1080p 30, if I remember that right. The video codec was not that good, but it was a full frame camera, so the field of view was a bit bigger than on this camera, but apart from that everything was very similar. So what were my expectations? Basically I didn't have an on camera which had video functionality at all, therefore I didn't have that much of an experience with a smaller camera and not a professional one. And the second was I didn't purchase this camera for making photos, but rather than that for making videos, because of YouTube, generating output, just being creative a bit more, getting back into cutting movies or at least film material. Third, why I decided to purchase the G85. I had some criteria which were all basically met by this camera. First of all, it's a weather sealed body. Second of all, it's not that big in terms of form factor. That means the lens is not that big, even though it's a fixed aperture lens. Overall body form factor is quite nice. It's not that heavy. What's also very nice is it has of course 4K at 30 frames per second. It can shoot at 1080p 60, and one of the things I like about this camera, it's a flip out screen like on the Canon DSLRs. Like the 80D and 70D for example, because that's one of the features I was very reliant on, because I don't want to have or hook up a additional monitor, an external one, which would cost me roughly 500 euros at least, and to just have it like this, just to check the framing and check what's in the image, and also just for the purpose of flipping it around and then just have it protected from the inside. So that's also quite a nice feature. Therefore this decision fell on this camera because there was one competitor that was Sony Alpha 6500, if I could remember that right, or 6300. At this time it was more expensive and the lenses were more expensive, even though I would have purchased it. But the one fact why I didn't purchase this camera system by Sony was the battery life, because I wanted to shoot 4K and the Sony cameras overheat in 4K, or over the models I could have purchased back in the days would overheat in 4K, as well as have a very bad battery life. So this one here, the battery as you see here, it's not huge, but it's big enough to power this camera for quite some time, or for quite a while. And I purchased just an additional one for this camera, and I didn't need anything more. And the third factor, or one of the other big features of this camera, is the in-body stabilization, or just called IBIS. What does that mean? If you see here, the camera just put up the lens, and this sensor here, it's not completely fixed mounted, but it's mounted on a very dynamic basis. and as soon as the camera moves, this sensor also moves. The body features IBIS, as well as the lens features image stabilization, as well as the body has also electronic image stabilization. So when you put everything on, like electronic image stabilization, in-body image stabilization, and also the stabilization on the lens, then you get a very, very, very stable image. There is nothing else in this price range which could somehow get close to this. You have to use somehow a gimbal or something, or like a Steadicam, to just achieve something similar to this, or glide cam. Of course, a lot of people complain about the one and only thing on this camera, and this is autofocus. Why? So basically, this camera doesn't feature a face detection autofocus, but a contrast-based autofocus. And that means it's analyzing the image, just seeing where is the highest contrast in the area where I should focus, and then just apply the focus to it. And when something changes quite rapidly, it doesn't catch up that fast as a face detection autofocus, which is working a bit different. Okay, there are solutions to this. Maybe somewhere here you will see a video to have a reliable autofocus, as well as 4K. Because the autofocus is better when you shoot in 1080p rather than 4K. So when you're a person who is shooting more or less in 1080p, then this camera, or who's not dependent on 4K, then this camera won't be maybe your fit, because then you're maybe better off with a Canon camera or a Sony camera, a smaller one. If you want to shoot in 4K and you can compensate a slower autofocus, then this one is for you. Other than that, still very keen that this camera has an external microphone input. It was also one of my mandatory features I needed, because I'm an audio guy, music guy, as well as music tech guy, and therefore external microphone has to be hooked up to the camera directly to don't sync audio in post. It's still an additional step to do in post, and I wanted to avoid that. Also, the body is weather sealed, still like that. There's also a great feature set on those dials here. So you have two main dials where you can just set the aperture, the shutter speed, and when you click on this button here, then you can just set the ISO and the white balance. So very easy to dial in everything you need. Also, you can set custom profiles. I mostly work with custom profiles because I mostly use it for filming. So therefore you can change every little bit and every single menu to a custom profile. That's very nice. But it also features very good auto profiles, like the usual program mode and scene modes and intelligent auto modes and all this stuff. It also features here on this dial a lot of different modes, like single shooting, serial shooting, and 4K series, and also different other modes like time lapse, stop motion. So there's a very, very wide range of use cases for this camera. And if you're a guy who shoots more, or a person who shoots more photos rather than videos, then this camera is still very, very good. It's integrated flash, but I don't need this, so interchangeable lenses. And also maybe regarding the autofocus, why I don't have that much issues, I've purchased another lens rather than the kit lens. So my recommendation would be to get the body and don't purchase the kit lens with it, or maybe purchase it with it because it's just an additional 100 euros, roughly 150 euros, and therefore it's quite cheap for what you get. But purchase a different lens, and I purchased the lens from the G series. That's the more professional micro four thirds lenses, and that's basically the 12 to 35 millimeter, which is regarding the micro four thirds, then in the crop factor of 1 to 2 roughly. So you can just roughly double the focal length. It's roughly a 24 to 70 millimeter focal length range, and it's featuring a fixed aperture of 2.8, so you can shoot in every focal length with a 2.8 aperture, and that's very nice. So it's also in low light very, very capable. You get also a lot of cheap lenses for this camera system, micro four thirds camera system, from Olympus, from Panasonic, There are various Japanese companies or manufacturers which are providing not expensive lenses to this camera system or mounting system. You can also purchase what they are called, metabones. You can also purchase adapters to just bump up the aperture, and also use other lenses like, for example, Canon EZ lens mounts, and or the Canon mounts and Sony mounts and whatsoever. So that's all possible with this camera. One thing you have to bear in mind regarding Micro Four Thirds is that it's a bit not that good in terms of field of view. So the field of view will be a bit narrower rather than on the APS-C or even full frame equivalents, but I think that's totally fine for what you get here. Another great feature is the remote app, so you can hook up the camera with iOS or Android phones or even tablets with the remote app, so you have also a secondary monitor for viewing the image on the camera and also making changes remotely like aperture, shutter and all this other stuff. Regarding image quality, that's quite nice. I still like it a lot. Also like the colors. I mostly shoot with the Cinelike D. It's mainly the one profile which is very flat. It's more like a log profile, not that log style like, so it's not that flat, but it's okay enough to shoot with this camera and to color grade later on. And I have set up 2 custom profiles for video shooting, for later editing, and latest I also did another custom profile with 1080p and 60p or 30p and vivid colors to do live streaming maybe sometime soon in the future with this camera as well, because it also has, and that's quite a good feature compared to the Canon cameras, for example, it has a clean HDMI output, so you can also just use your PC basically to record all the stuff in 4K or at least in 1080-60. But that's up to the thing what you're using, which stream stick, for example, or which kind of HDMI stick or HDMI interface you use for your PC. There were also several firmware updates I've done with this. That's very important to get the latest features and also fix some issues with, for example, autofocus modus. I think that's basically everything. I've talked about the flip out screen, I've talked about the lens, I've talked about the IBIS, the settings of the camera, the custom profiles, the dials. I've talked about the autofocus and why it's not that bad for me, because I'm used to a camera system which didn't have that much better autofocus or even didn't have any film functionality at all, and therefore I have chosen this camera. Apart from battery life, apart from lens system, and apart from the build quality overall, and of course the price, which is regarding pricing compared to the feature set, it's nearly a no-brainer. The only thing you should care about and you should decide if you can live with it is really the autofocus, and that's everything. Battery life great, build quality great, feature set great. Okay, so hope you liked it. Drop me a comment. Maybe you have also something you liked or you disliked about this camera. I still like my camera and I still like Panasonic. Hope that the next iteration and the successor to this one, or the G85 successor, will somehow have a face detection autofocus, and then this is the perfect fit. Okay, I think, that's it. Hope you liked it. Drop me a comment below. Maybe subscribe for future updates, and see you soon.